When I say the phrase German games, what's the first thing that comes to your mind? Spec Ops The Line, Signalis, Crosscode, all valid answers, but wrong. For me, I'd immediately think of Gothic, a game made by now defunct studio Piranha Bytes Games about the daily struggle of living in a Polish slave camp. When people talk about Piranha Bytes, the first game they bring up is Gothic 2, then Gothic 1. For good reason though. These games were solid and made with care. Gothic is the company's first and most beloved franchise. After Gothic, they made Risen and Elix. Both were franchises that never reached the heights of its first son. And now, 2 decades after the first game, a remake of Gothic looms on the horizon for early 2026. Past the closure of Piranha Bytes, Gothic has outlived its creators. So in preparation for the remake, I've decided to revisit the original Gothic. Why? Well, I thought it'd be interesting. Now, before we even get into playing Gothic, there are some housekeeping issues. This is an old game, and I'm playing this on a modern PC. When I try to record this with OBS normally, it just black screens. So I'm gonna need some external support. First we go to the workshop section on Steam. Here we're gonna need 5 mods. Union, fixes bugs, improves game compatibility, and performance for modern PCs. Next, we have Ninja, an extension that allows for extra mod support along with the toolkit to help smooth out the process. From here, we pick the Gothic 1 community patch for bug fixes. The only true quality of life mod I'm going to be using is the Union Natural Sprint mod, so I can just run around quicker. If you want to add anything else, just browse the workshop page and pick and choose as you see fit. We click the gear icon, go to Properties, Beta, and select Workshop Beta. From here, we begin our story. The game takes place in the land of Murtana. Murtana is comprised of several smaller nations that make up a whole continent, all under the control of the king. He reached this position by making the smaller nations submit to his rule, just like King Charles. All was right in the land, until the orcs attacked. The orcs with their superior numbers and natty gains easily overpowered the mighty Murtanian army, which consists of 5 archers just shooting on ground level. What did they think was going to happen? The war ends up lasting so long that it puts a drain on the resources, including the ore needed to forge weapons. To fix this issue, convicts are sent to work in the mines for ore. Every criminal, no matter how minuscule the crime, is sent there. So if you're a guy who littered on the streets that day, sorry pal, you're mining ore of the convicted sex offenders. The king then orders his cadre of mages to put up a magic barrier on the mine to ensure they can never leave. Goes about as well as you expect. With the commotion caused by the barrier, the prisoners start a coup and take control of the mines of Carinus. But the king still needs his ore, so he strikes a deal with the prisoners. Food, booze, women, all for the price of continuing the ore shipments. As this is happening, more prisoners are still being sent to the mines, which is where we come in. We're a no-name prisoner set to be thrown in the mines, until a mage comes along and entrusts us to deliver a message to the leader of the mages. After we're given our mission, we're thrown in the mines.
Welcome to the colony.
With that, the game begins and we meet our first NPC, Diego. He gives us a very basic rundown on the political situation in the barrier. There are 3 major factions in the camp. The Old Camp are the biggest and strongest faction. They're the guys we see in the opening cutscene that rebel and take over the prison. Diego is part of this gang, and he suggests us to join up with them with the promise of protection and free meals a day. The Old Camp is run by Gomez. He's the guy that started the rebellion and now sits atop the throne. The second faction are the New Camp. They used to be part of the Old Camp, but split since they didn't agree with Gomez's tyranny. While the Old Camp are content with just sitting and waiting for this to blow over, the New Camp are actively seeking for a way to escape the barrier. And finally, they're the Second Camp. They're religious potheads. They smoke weed, and this allows them to contact their god, the Sleeper, who they believe will free them from the barrier. Also, they do magic. No matter how we respond to Diego, the first chapter of the game begins, and we're set loose. Now, the first thing you'll probably notice about the game is the controls. It's interesting to say the least. If you're using the Union patch, you have the option to rebind your controls how you see fit. But back then, you could essentially play Gothic without a mouse. For me, I'm using alternative controls. I find this option a nice middle ground of sorts. The main thing you need to remember is the control key is king. Control does everything in the game. Picking up items, moving items between inventories, combat. You'll be pressing the control button a lot in this game. The interesting about this is that it doesn't feel weird once you play it for an hour or so. It feels weirdly natural, and I'm not even saying this in a Stockholmy way. To a modern gamer, this may seem clunky and unconventional, which, yeah, it kind of is, but Gothic kind of makes it work with how concise its controls are to handle. Today, games are pretty streamlined to have one button for a specific action. Now you basically need to get used to pressing one button to do a lot of your actions. Another interesting quirk with the controls is combat. It's finicky. The attack keys are binded to your movement keys. You draw your weapon with the spacebar, and to attack, you press Ctrl A or D in arrhythmic swings. The issue here is you can't move at all when attacking unless you're doing an overhead attack, Ctrl plus W. Your movement grinds to a halt when you are engaged in combat. You can't move and strike at the same time. You have to commit to one action at a time in quick succession. Combat can be fun when you're engaging with one enemy at a time. Unfortunately, combat usually involves hordes of enemies charging at you, Senator Armstrong style. My only advice for you in this situation is to space them out with their clunky AI and take them on one by one. Okay, now that we've gotten the hang of the controls, we can head down the mountain pass to the old camp. It's here we see the scale this game works with and how it lures players to explore the world. The first thing you see when walking down the mountain is the massive walls that surround the old camp, so obviously you go and check that out. Along the way, you'll meet two hunters from the new camp who basically tell you the same thing Diego warned us: don't go into the forest. Especially at this point in the game. Everything can kill you. You'll probably have killed a junior mole rat and some mini scavengers by this point, and so you think to yourself, I should be able to handle their adult variants. No. Animals, especially early on, are your biggest obstacle in the way of progression. The areas in Gothic aren't sectioned off by magical barriers, they're sectioned off by the animals, just like the forest in real life. Even if you manage to kill one scavenger, the rest of the pack will charge at you. I mean, just look at the way your character holds the sword. Oh god. This is how Gothic sections off difficult areas to the player. The deeper you go, the more dangerous the threat. You can technically outrun some of the enemies by abusing their AI, but eventually you'll have to take these guys on, and you'll need to be prepared to do so. This is the magic of Gothic. Despite being trapped in a magical dome, you're free to explore the world and progress how you see fit. But ideally you shouldn't be. In many games, decision fatigue comes into effect when players are presented with an overwhelming amount of choice. When presented with choice, players will always choose to strategize what quests they should prioritize first with the limited time they have. Gothic solves this issue of overwhelming choice by gating off areas with fights, creating a funnel to guide players without overwhelming them. The cool thing about these animals is that they aren't mindless beasts too. They've got a pretty basic but effective AI to them. When you approach a pack of animals, they scream at you to back away. When it's nighttime, the pack may be sleeping, but one creature will be standing watch. The more dangerous creatures in late game slowly prowl towards you when they spot you. Some animals can even be seen fighting each other in the wild. It's such a small touch that makes these blocky facsimiles of animals feel more realistic. Same goes for human NPCs too. Have your weapon drawn out for too long, and they'll engage in combat, and if they beat you, they steal your ore. Speaking of humans... Okay, maybe we shouldn't go to the forest. So let's go to one of the camps. Naturally, being the first big settlement you see, you go to the old camp. Diego's here after all. He said he would set us up with a nice deal. Here we can learn about the social structures of the camp. First, there are the Ore Barons. We can guess that these guys helped Gomez during the rebellion and are his most trusted men. Beside the Ore Barons are the Fire Mages. Their skill in magic makes them incredibly powerful and useful assets to Gomez. Below them, the Guards, the main fighting force of the old camp. Second lowest on the totem are the Shadows. These guys have a variety of jobs: scouts, thieves, traders, assassins. Diego is a Shadow, and is the de facto leader of the team. And at the bottom of the hierarchy are the Diggers, miners who spend their days digging for ore in the old mine. By this point in the game, we are at the level of a digger, and the inmates in the old camp will constantly remind you where you stand. The Guards, the Shadows, even other diggers, are a damn meat bug to them. Everyone is out to exploit you. The most famous example is the Amulet quest. Early on, you'll be shaken down by a guard named Bloodwind, and just a bit later, you get a quest from a random inmate to earn some cash. Obviously, you take it. Okay, this should be nice and easy.
So, here we are, far away from your friend Diego. I'm to send you regards from Bloodwind.
Wait, what? No! Like I said, everyone is out to exploit you. Okay, this place sucks. What about the other two camps? The new camp's a bit more widespread compared to the old camp. Everything here looks a lot more makeshift. The new camp are led by the water mages and a guy named Lee, who we later learn was a general in the king's army. There are a couple interesting figures here. Most of the ore from the new camp is put toward a giant pile underneath the camp. Why are they doing this? Well, besides being used to make weapons, the magic ore can release energy when affected by magic. Think of it like a giant EMP. This all sounds nice at first, but the first thing we see when entering the new camp is a rice field. And let's just say a lot of these guys aren't working here at their own free will. The guards claim they don't discriminate like in the new camp, but they're just as paranoid about outsiders as the old camp. And the water mage's plan to get everyone out is to just nuke the barrier with as much magic ore as possible, Simpsons movie style. That just leaves the sect camp, or the swamp camp as stated by some. Unlike the new camp, which talk about freedom and autonomy, the sect camp kinda lives up to that. Folks are left to do what they want, smoke as much weed as they desire, as long as they chip in to help with the camp's maintenance. The sect camp want to make contact with their ancient deity, called the Sleeper, which promises to destroy the barrier once it awakens from its slumber. I'll say it now, I'm a sect camp apologist, and I don't even like smoking weed. It just feels like a more chill community to be a part of. Sure, the swamp has more dangerous wildlife than the areas around the other camps, but hey, good food and free pot. Now, after describing all these factions, you must think, wow, all these camps suck in their own ways. But that's kind of what I like about them. These camps feel like products of their environment, like this is what actual prisoners would do in a situation like this. One group stages a coup and becomes a new establishment, the other seeks a means of escape, and the last turns to religion. They aren't wacky fantasy factions meant to be eye-catching or cool, they're incredibly mundane and rather boring. That makes me like them a lot more, and that makes the more fantastical elements of their camp much more interesting. It makes this fantasy world feel more lived in, like, yeah, there's this massive war between the humans and the orcs, and here they are, just chilling. By putting more emphasis on player immersion, players are able to engage more of the game. And Gothic succeeds by making its factions believable and realistic. By the way, did I mention that you can learn magic in this game? Gothic has very simple player stats. When you level up, you get some health and 10 skill points. Skill points can be applied immediately to your character. You need to find a skill teacher to help you hone those skills. These can be used to upgrade useful stats like strength, one-handed weapons, mana, along with less useful stats like pickpocketing and animal skinning. Early on, you should really be prioritizing strength or dexterity, just so you can use a sword or bow. And trust me, you are going to need a weapon to handle a lot of the quests early on. Later down the line though, you can specialize into magic and obliterate everything. Skill points aren't infinite, but there are enough enemies and XP for you to invest in if you want to test some skills out. My advice is to power level what you want early game and use your remaining skill points for some vanity skills late game. So there are 3 playstyles you can go for in Gothic: a warrior, a ranger, and a mage. Warriors specialize in close range combat. In the early game, you'll be using one-handed weapons, and the more powerful late game weapons require two-handed training. Strength is the name of the game for you. It's about getting up close and personal with your enemies and killing them before they kill you. If you plan on playing a warrior, please have strong enough armor, because you will be doing a lot of tanking. Rangers focus on long-distance combat with bows and crossbows, which scale off the user's dexterity. The upside of this class grants the user the advantage of range if they don't want to deal with the game's melee combat. Bows, especially late game, are very strong. The downside to bows is dealing with the game's aiming RNG. Gothic doesn't have a conventional aiming system like in other games. Here, you lock onto a target, press the attack button, and pray to God that the arrows hit your enemies before they get to you. Finally, we have magic. To the surprise of no one, magic's really strong, so no way the developers are just gonna give it to you right away. There are 6 circles of magic to learn from. The more circles we've learned, the better the spells we can use. Spell teachers aren't as common and out in the open as the other skill teachers. Spells require mana to use, and the better the spell, the more mana intensive it is. Spells benefit like bows and crossbows with the power of added distance, except unlike bows, they don't have a clunky hitbox. Now, Gothic may seem difficult and confusing, and maybe it's because of how I'm explaining it, but it really isn't. Gothic is less about skill and more about having high enough stats and numbers. Enemies have high number, you gotta do quests to match their numbers. You kill them till you reach an enemy with a bigger number. The classic case of mechanical difficulty. When everything can kill you, you gotta work your way up to match their strength. The rise in power is gradual too, so by the time you fight an army of orcs on your own, the progress feels earned and deserved. Okay Zane, you've been telling us all about Gothic and its different mechanics, factions, and skill systems, but why should I even engage in all this? Well, in James Paul G's paper on video game design and aesthetic experiences, he talks about how video game designers motivate the player to complete a game's tasks. In the paper, he discusses how humans better retain information by performing goal-based activities that they're invested in. He says, and I quote, "When a person has such a motivating action to take in an experience, the person stores, remembers, and can use the experience more deeply and more adeptly than in an experience where there is no effective affecting action." There might be some translation issues because this paper was originally written in Italian, but you should get the point. Motivation drives players to move forward, and the primary motivating factor in Gothic isn't the need to save the world, it's revenge. The drive to take on a creature or NPC that wiped the floor with you, and then actually doing it. It's just satisfying, but as the saying of the sea goes, there's always a bigger fish, or in this case, a shadow beast. So the basic cycle in Gothic is to complete quests, kill enemies, explore the areas, till you get roadblocked by another enemy that proves too strong for you, making you, the player, restart the whole entire process again with the hopes of besting your foes. That's what makes Gothic fun to me, the ever brutal climb to the top of the food chain. All these little systems of the NPCs, mechanics, exploration, all make the game come together to create something memorable. On the flip side of memorable, I've been putting off the game's main story because it's the weakest part of the game. Yeah, I consider it worse than the combat in some cases. So no matter which faction we join, we eventually end up in the center of the old camp where we complete our original errand of delivering the letter. However, the letter is addressed to the leader of the fire mages, Zardas, who disappeared not long after the barrier was set up. With our main lead and mission being cut short, we're free to progress our faction's quests, which eventually leads us to aiding the sect camp to contact their god. In a shocking twist, it's revealed the sleeper god the sect have been worshipping is evil. Not only that, it's also the reason the barrier malfunctioned in the first place. Realizing how dire things are, the water mages of the new camp send us out to find Zardas to aid with their escape plan. Zardas, naturally, points out how stupid the plan is and reveals the game's final twist, that our main character is in fact the Chosen One, destined to defeat the great evil and save the land. I used to think that this twist kind of ruined Gothic's story, but the more I think about it, it really doesn't change much. Our protagonist started out as a total loser who could barely kill a giant chicken, but by this point in the game, he's a certified badass. The fact he's a chosen hero destined to save the world really doesn't take away from his growth. Really, it makes the fact that you made it this far much more rewarding. It definitely feels like you're worthy of the title by the time Zardas tells you this. Anyways, Zardas makes you find a suit of ore armor and a magic sword called Eurizio to combat the sleeper, and for an extra boost of power, you stick the sword into the magic ore pile in the new camp. With your new sword in hand, you're ready to fight the sleeper, the final boss of this epic adventure. Can't wait to take this guy down with the sword. Oh, it's a puzzle fight. You can't even damage him with your fancy new sword directly. You have to strike his weird heart things to hurt him. The only time you actually strike him with the sword is in the ending cutscene. Why even give me this cool weapon in the first place if I can't beat the final boss with it? Well, at least we're told the barrier comes down after it's defeated. We don't even see it. We're just told this. This is the last thing we hear before the end credits.
When the sleeper was banished into his own dimension, I returned to daylight. The magic barrier had fallen. But for me, the adventure had only just begun.
Wonderful. So yeah, that was Gothic. On a technical level and a graphic level, Gothic can seem incredibly dated. But this was in 2001. The most popular example of an action RPG at the time was Ultima Underworld. Morrowind wouldn't be released for another year. The setting, character progression, and exploration all contributed to making this game a classic to this day. Many games like Gothic would be released as time went on, a lot by Piranha Bytes themselves, but it's nice to see the series' humble beginnings before its eventual modern day resurgence. To a young gamer in the 2000s, Gothic seemed like a bright sign for the future, and I guess in many ways they were right. See you next time.